Hello, everybody, and welcome to Marvin Gardens, July 2023. Now, the interesting thing about this gardening month is that we were away from the garden for about 12 days, almost 2 full weeks. And when you leave the garden after the first week of July, things get out of control, which they did here. We had lots of rain. The watering system was going. When we came back, as expected, there were huge summer squashes and some harvestable eggplants. And so we harvested that stuff right away because it really needed it. And I think I have a picture of that harvest basket. And actually, even though they were hugely oversized, cutting them up and roasting them, they were still delicious and quite edible. So we're still trying to catch up. Actually, Vanina is right next to me, doing all kinds of weeding to try and help us get this place in control. And that doesn't even mention all the weeding that we did basically the day we got back and afterwards. But things are more or less in control now. But there's still there's still a lot to be done. But we're getting caught up. Anyway, let's spin around here, and I'm a little concerned because I don't see Frankie because it's corn season, and that's what I let him get into so far. But I'm afraid he's going to be in there helping himself. But before we do anything else, I don't see him in there, so that's a good sign. Anyway, here's the garlic chives, or Asian leeks, and the pond irises, where we usually start these days. And Mr. Coco, looking colorful and having a good time watching over everything. Too bad we couldn't get him to harvest some stuff while we were away. Nothing to show you in the greenhouse, but we'll walk over here to bed number 1, and you can see the planters are doing fine with the marigolds all the way around. I don't know if you can see off in the distance there, but there is Cassie, and she's doing okay. Prancing around a little bit. Although she's panting, I may have to take her in pretty quickly so she doesn't get overheated. So anyway, there's a good close-up of the hanging baskets. Now, we only harvested the stuff that absolutely needed to be harvested immediately, but I've left everything else. There's a lot that's due to be harvested, but I wanted to show you the garden in its peak before I started pulling the stuff out of it. And this may not be recognizable, but it's actually those huge daikon radishes, and they've obviously all gone to flower, but that doesn't seem to seriously affect the radishes underneath, so I'm not too worried. And as you can see, if you compare my hand to that one that's showing back in there, we've got some huge radishes, and I imagine I'm going to be harvesting a lot of this before I even finish editing the video. Okay, so this is the first interruption of probably 3 to the originally shot July garden video, because as I stated earlier, I wanted you to be able to see the garden before everything was harvested that was due to be harvested. And so I had enough time after the fact to go ahead and shoot some videos of the harvesting and to include them in the original video. So here we go. This is daikon radishes, which are kind of unrecognizable as such, but we're going to go through one by one and see if they're big enough to pull or if they're small enough that they need to stay in the ground. And then we're going to snip off the tops, wash them all off, and see what we end up with. So here we go. Okay, so this is what we ended up with. Everything from about this size to the biggest one, this size, as you can see. Very nice size, meal in itself. And we had some with bug damage, probably because they were just left in the ground so long. And I never did any insecticide on these guys. So if I had bug damage on the top and they were salvageable, I just cut it off like that, and there's plenty of radish there to enjoy. Now what I've left, which is not easy to see, is all the ones that I thought were small enough that they really weren't worth harvesting without at least giving them a chance to maybe grow up a little bit. So we'll let these go for another week or so, and if they get bigger, great. If not, we'll just pull the rest of them as small radishes. And that ends the daikon radish harvest for July 2023. So we'll have I think some harvest baskets to show you, and they will probably include at least a few of these red cabbage. That one there looks like it's pretty ready, and that one on the end does too. The others maybe could use a little more time. And speaking of cabbage, our storage number 4s are in about the same situation. That one right there looks like it's about ready to go. And there's one or two others that are also. Now, you may not notice next to them, but we do have some summer planted brassicas down there. I can't remember exactly which is which, but it's broccoli and cauliflower. And our existing broccoli has obviously been neglected. But I'm going to come in and clip off a bunch of shoots that are still edible, and some kale leaves that will also be pretty edible, although right now I see a stinking Japanese beetle on there. Nothing that a little flick won't take care of. And our Brussels sprouts, I don't know if, well, you can probably see that they've been eaten quite a bit, and that's because you don't want to put more than 2 weeks between hitting them with BT, which is the best organic preventative of those guys. So they have been since sprayed, so hopefully the new leaves coming in will not get chewed up. And meanwhile, that green kale looking pretty good, and I'm sure we've got some leaves that we can take out of there. And that brings us to, what is this, about the 3 feet high, I think, cutting celery, which we still haven't quite figured out what to do with, so that they don't taste bitter. So that still remains a challenge, but in the meantime, they're just growing like crazy. So so at least they're looking good. We just have to figure out what to do with them. All right, now here we are at the herb garden, and you can see a couple of healthy basil plants, cinnamon basil, I believe they are, and then there's some garlic chives, or Asian leeks, and they're almost getting ready to flower there, so that's good. Our darky parsley isn't looking very dark at all. Getting kind of pale. Looks like it might be on kind of the end of its life cycle, which kind of surprises me. I thought they would go all summer. And then the rest of these are chives. There might be an Asian leek in there as well. This is our sage that has pretty much given up the ghost, although I left it in the ground. And the rosemary, 2 varieties of rosemary, which are doing pretty good. And then, of course, our impressive bed of thyme. This in the front here, that's not blooming, is the winter thyme. And then all the creeping thyme is has all gone to bloom. And I don't think that negatively affects the thyme, but we'll find out. And here in the Pet Memorial area, we got black-eyed Susans or something similar, blooming nicely. And I did clean this up last time, but it's getting unclean again, so I'm gonna have to come in here and weed like is needed everywhere else. And then finally on the end of bed number 1, we've got melons, cantaloupe, and maybe, nope, not up, down, maybe, have I got it in focus? Yes, right there might be the first cantaloupe that's actually maturing. We've had lots of blooms, but nothing that's gotten pollinated. And but now that I'm looking at it, I think some of these little ones here are, I don't know, I can't see if I've got that in focus or not. That one, I think it's right there. Oh, there's one. There's for sure one that's that has been pollinated and is starting to swell. So that's good, and I just discovered it this very minute. Nothing to show you over there. Cassie's chewing on some grass. It's always good to see her interested in something. And all right, so this brings us to the saddest story of July. And what you're seeing there, actually what you're not seeing there, is one dead pumpkin vine. It doesn't even have any leaves left on it. It's just a straggly looking brown vine. So I don't know what happened with that. I think I got bad seeds, because only one of them out of 4 germinated, and this one was never did much of anything. Down here we got cilantro / coriander that has gone well into blooming, so I guess we're gonna harvest it as coriander, because I think that's what the seeds of this what the heck, I just said that cilantro. Sometimes it's sad getting old. Anyway, the seeds of the cilantro are the coriander. I believe I've got that right. Now we've got a couple of nice rows of calendula blooming happily. Looks like I might need to tie them up a little bit to keep them straight on the straight and narrow. And then we got various varieties of onions. I believe these big ones are actually bunching onions. But we have not harvested them, so they're bigger than they should be, but I think when we pull them we'll find that they're not bulbing at all, as opposed to a row right next to them of white onions, which are bulbing and starting to fall over, indicating that they're about ready to be harvested. And then we got a bunch of yellow onions that are even further along and falling over, and followed by red onions, which are almost all fallen over, as well as these white onions on this end of the patch. Now, if you recall, these were planted from sets, and they were planted very late to recover from the plants that I planted earlier, that none of which survived. And it looks like, you know, they didn't even have names of the varieties, so you know, it was just white, red, and yellow. So it looks like they were kind of inferior, and we're only going to get a lot of them will just be small onion bulbs. They also, by planting them so late, the season that signals, or the sunlight that signals when they're supposed to stop growing and bulb up, happened probably too early in their life cycle. So that's another reason we're probably going to get small stuff. But, all right, so now it's time for onions. There was a lot of them that were overdue for harvesting, even though they're painfully, disappointingly small in many cases. But we're going to pull them, put them in the wheelbarrow, rinse them off, and then lay them out in the greenhouse to dry. Okay, we're done with the onions. Really kind of a meager harvest as far as size is concerned. Probably one of the most meager harvests I've ever had since I started really growing onions. Well, since I started learning how to properly grow onions, I should say. But anyway, here they are. The white variety, which is the only name it has, the red variety, which is the only name it has, and back here is the yellow variety, which, like I say, is the only name it had. You might see a couple of yellows in between the whites. Those are the very originally planted candy onions that actually survived, so they're here still too. But that's it. The yellow onions turned out the best. They're the biggest size, but let me take this one out, and this is literally the biggest onion we've had. So I don't know where the focus place is, but there we go. So you can see it's a few inches across, but I've had many larger onions. However, onions are done, so let's move on. There's my shadow and a nice strawberry blonde sunflower. These guys have come in very nicely, and I think we'll probably be able to cut a few off and bring them inside. This one here is not a strawberry blonde, so it's a volunteer from years before. And we got a couple of rows of straw flowers that have been doing pretty well. Vanina pulled a bunch of them too, but there's more coming. And then down here we got a row of volunteer ground cherries that haven't been doing much of anything, but I still expect that they'll eventually take off. There's even, if you look really closely, oh, I'm not going to be able to put that in focus. Unfortunately, I can't see the screen very well, but there's a couple of ground cherries on that little tiny plant, so there's hope. And then these are volunteer calendulas that have also come up. Now, this jungle is our summer squash, and they are in basically peak production. You probably saw the harvest basket of the ones that were oversized. This is one of the ones that I bought as an extra plant because it's not a crookneck yellow. There's a zucchini nestled in there, not quite harvestable size yet. I don't see a crookneck right now, but we'll swing around here and see. There's also some more volunteer calendula plants or flowers coming in. Okay. And let's see if I see a crookneck in here anywhere. I do not. I also don't see any scallop squash, although we picked a few giant ones, 4 giant ones, I think, when we came back from our vacation. And that brings us to one of the best sites of the glory days of gardening. Oh, speak of the devil. What'd you get, boy? That's a pretty big one. I wish you hadn't got that one, but at least you'll be able to work on that for a while before... Oh, he knocked down another one here. So I hope you take that one next, boy. You know, it's tough having a dachshund that loves corn when you're trying to grow corn, but by the same token, that's one of his greatest pleasures in the summer season, so how can I rob him of anything? I think there are quite a few of these that are ready to be harvested. This variety actually lasts pretty well on the vine, so to speak, so you don't have to harvest them the moment that they're ready. But I'm pretty happy with the count. They look maybe like they might be smaller than I had last year, but many of them are a good size. Just have to keep them away from Frankie. Right, boy? I can't blame them. So, that looks like a lovely stand of corn, and that's one of the reasons I grow it, because it just gets so impressive in its one little season. So it's a couple of days since we shot the garden video that you're looking at right now. Well, not right now, but just before this. And it's time to harvest some corn. Hope I didn't wait too late. You can see there's plenty to choose from here, and what I'm doing is I'm looking for the ones that are physically the biggest and that have silks that are completely dried and brown and that are full or feel tight underneath all the way to the top. That's pretty much the 3 criteria. So this one, for example, I would pick, and let's see if my it's virtually perfect. As you can see there, kernels fully formed but not too big, not a hint of insect damage, and that's just a perfect ear of corn. That's all there is to it. And this particular variety is known for being able to stay on the stalk here and not and not go bad. In other words, you don't have to like time it perfectly. So it looks like maybe I did not wait too long. Most of them I'm going to leave the what do you call these? The sheaths. I know that's not the right word. Husks. I'm going to leave the husks on because that's the way we freeze them. But of course, we can't resist eating a few fresh. So, all right, that's what I'm going to do with the whole bed, and let's see how it turns out. Okay, all done for today. 91 ears. I harvested some that were a little small, but when I felt the tops, it felt like they were as filled out as they were going to be. And so one of the smallest ones I opened up to see. And as you can see, even though it's small, it's a nice ear of corn. And there was nothing more that was going to come in there. So 91, and oh, there's probably another few dozen on the stalks, and hopefully I'll give them a few days to see if they fill out a little bit more. But like I said, with this variety, there's no real rush of missing the peak. So we'll come back in a few days and see if there's more to pull down. In the meantime, 91 is a pretty good harvest for the entire season. So I'm pretty happy with the way everything turned out. Now that brings us over to bed number 5, and we got. Although the plants aren't looking very good, I don't think they liked the last bug spray that I used on them. But we do have some eggplants coming in. Boy, they look terrible. Oh, that's not good. But anyway, it won't be the first disaster for this season. We got lots of peppers coming in. We didn't pull any since coming back because we just as soon let them get a chance to turn red, as most of them will. Like that one that's turning, and also I think I saw some red ones under here. Yeah, if I could get my fingers and leaves out of the way so you could focus on it. Forget it. Let's try this one over here. And there we go. Almost. All right. So there you can see a red pepper. I can't remember the variety that is, but then there's the tomato jungle. We're having superior growth out of the tomatoes. These are probably our favorites, the Juliets, and you can see a cluster of them. Not many of them are turning red yet, but they're coming in very nicely, and as you can see, just overspilling the tops of the cages by quite a bit. Then I can't remember the name of the variety, but this is a larger beefsteak type, and there's lots of them coming in, and in pretty good sizes, I might add. Look at that cluster. It's amazing. So hopefully they will make it to redness. That's also a larger variety. It's coming in pretty well. I didn't refresh my memory on what the varieties are. We won't even look in there again. Meanwhile, the marsh is coming along nicely. Boy, I can't. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's, I'd say about 20 active cattails, which is more than we got last year. And as usual, it's spreading out. You can kind of see they have runners that come out, and so it creates a line of cattails. And unfortunately, I had to start cutting them down because they weren't allowing for a lawnmower to come through even. So let's see, I don't think we'll bother to go out to the asparagus patch, especially because I'll get sprayed by the deer deterrents, which seem to be working quite well. There's no sign that anything else has been chomped off. Oh, Frankie. Come on, boy. Come on, get this one. Frankie. Oh, let me see if I can get him to... Franklin. Sorry for this distraction, but I don't want him to take another one. If I can avoid it. Here, boy. Come on. Come here. Look, come here. Excuse me. Maybe I'll cut this part out. All right, boy. Here you go. Come right here. That's not a bad size one either. But this is the look of a happy dachshund in the garden in his favorite garden activity, which is eating corn. Oh. All right, and here's Cassie, who's panting a little bit, so we're going to finish up this video and get inside, or take her inside anyway, and keep Frankie out of the corn bed. We got the water features here, not much blooming going on, but they did bloom, and our honeysuckle is no longer blooming, but growing nicely over the fence. And we'll take a quick look at the pond. I'm trying to hurry it along a little bit. The cone flowers are at their peak, starting to fall over a little bit, which is, I don't like that about them. They grow just too tall. I'm not sure if they stayed a little compact. You can't really see, now that I'm noticing, it looks like there's spots on the limb. I should have cleaned before I started all this. Well, it's too late now. There's our Mr. Koi, who seems to be happy having the place to himself, and the waterfall glistening in the sunlight, and all the pond plants and border plants and plants up on top are doing pretty well. The spillover trough is well populated, and also he's not out right now, but there's a huge bullfrog that's claimed that as his own. And the other big news of the day is that we may be a month late, or a month later than I like to do it, but we're finally getting the pond set up. So just got to get 3,700 gallons into it. No more pears at all. They all either dropped off or got scavenged. But the surprisingly good news is that we still do have nectarines, and that's one right there with a spider on it. hopefully he doesn't do any damage. But we've got, I'd say at least a dozen nectarines that are still showing promise. However, there was one year where we had some that were showing promise, and then those just rotted. So I'm being hopefully, cautiously optimistic. And same kind of situation with the peaches. Let's get to that one right there. Right there you go. And there's about a dozen on this tree as well. A few up there. They're kind of hard to pick out, but they are there. And so, as you can see, a reason for cautious optimism. And hold on. Who's the cameraman here? Oh, I am. Sorry. All right. So let's move that this way. There's Cassie waiting to come in. But it's time to wrap this up. Because I got a hot generic puppy that needs to go inside. I got one that's actively eating my corn and loving it. Like I say, I can't refuse him. He loves it so much. But I will need to try to manage him and make sure he doesn't have any more tonight. So that's it. I don't think there's anything else to show you. Like I said, probably before I get this posted, I'm going to do a lot of harvesting. So I'll put them up, either videos or stills or both, as it happens. But other than that, I think we are done for July. So this is Marvin Gardens, July 2023, and as you know, this is the High Holy Days of Gardening, as I call them, and we'll see you next time in August when things peak and start to slow down, and that's just the way the cycle goes. So I'll leave you with a happy dachshund eating corn, and I mean, the wagging tail, the crunching, and he always chews the cubs well, so that's not a danger for him to get that stuck somewhere in his. So, but enough about that, and we'll see you next time, like I say, in August. Bye, everybody.
Well, that's what it is. If they don't finish the food, I'll take it back. Well, that's, they don't